Hello and welcome to another edition of MLB This Week. It's the countdown to the MLB All-Star Game, only less than a week away now. And hello everyone, my name is Rich Baxter.
And I'm Gary Mack.
And Gary, tonight we had the MLB announcements of the starting All-Star rosters just a few minutes ago.
Yes, we certainly did, Rich, and of course voted on by the folks the last month and a half or so, and no real big surprises on either roster. Perhaps the only big surprise, if you want to call it a surprise, in the National League is that there's no Giancarlo Stanton so far, or Ryan Braun or David Wright. But other than that, it's pretty much as we would expect. If you want me to go through them.
Yeah, why not? We just had the announcements broadcasted on ESPN, a special announcement with the starting lineups. Why don't you take the National League, Gary?
Okay, the National League All-Stars at first base will be Paul Goldschmidt, and Chase Utley is going to be getting the start at second base of your home team town, the Philadelphia Phillies. Aramis Ramirez beat out David Wright for the start at third base. He, of course, from the Milwaukee Brewers. Troy Tulowitzki of Colorado is going to be the starting shortstop for the National League. And in the outfield, the three outfielders voted in by the folks are Yasiel Puig, Andrew McCutchen, and Carlos Gomez. Of course, Gomez with the Brewers, McCutchen with the Pirates, and Puig with the Dodgers. And the catcher is Yadier Molina. He was voted on from the Cardinals. And the pitchers, and I jotted these down fast. I hope I got them all. Johnny Cueto, Clayton Kershaw, Zach Greinke, Matt Bumgarner, Adam Wainwright, Julio Teheran, Greg Kimbrell, Chapman, Tony Watson, Pat Neshek, and K-Rod, Francisco Rodriguez, and a guy called Ross. I don't know. I didn't get his first name.
Yeah, Tyson Ross for the San Diego Padres. It's his first All-Star game. And Jordan Zimmerman from the Nationals. Not too sure if you mentioned him, but his second All-Star game, Gary.
Yeah, no, I missed him, but
and here's a surprise out of that list. Sorry, Gary. Johnny Cueto. It's his first All-Star game, and he's been a pitcher that's been reckoned with for a few years now with the National League.
Yeah, I think part of the problems he's had, though, is that he'd be good and bad. He'd get off to a hot start and then kind of slow down, and always had some control issues. This year seems to be putting it together better and pitching better. So interesting. Now we wait and see who gets the start. They just showed something on ESPN that I think Kershaw's last start will be Friday, which would put him pretty much on schedule to start the game. I think Cueto's was Saturday, and that was the main couple of guys that they showed. So now we wait and see who actually gets the nod. Just to remind everybody, last year it was Matt Harvey. You had to get that in there.
Yeah.
And
he seemed like a storybook pitcher last year. It was one of the biggest stories in baseball, and then less than 10 days later, it seemed like he was out.
Yeah, with Tommy John surgery, but he'll be back next year hopefully, and he'll be thrown off a mound around the All-Star break. So hopefully he'll be back for spring training next season. But that's the NL All-Stars, Rich.
Yeah, Yasiel Puig, of course, getting his first All-Star nomination here. And what a season he's having. He's leading the Dodgers in the offensive categories, and I think we're witnessing a birth of a superstar here with Puig. What do you think, Eric?
Well, I'm still going to hold some reservations because he seems to be a bit of a head case, so that's going to play a lot into it, whether they can really control that on him, but he's got all the tools, and he seems like he can do the job. One other thing, let me mention that Jeff Samardzija, hope I pronounced that right. He
Hmm.
also was selected for the reserves of the National League, but is ineligible because of the recent trade. He will not be able to partake in that, but whatever, I guess it goes for his contract or whatever, that he was selected as an All-Star, and he was replaced by Julio Teheran.
Ah, very interesting. So the trade affected his All-Star bid. And let's look at the American League starters for the 2014 MLB All-Star Game. Over first base, of course, Miguel Cabrera for the Tigers. His ninth All-Star selection. Robinson Cano, I'm going to pronounce that correct tonight. Uh, Seattle Mariners, his sixth All-Star bid here at the second base. Josh Donaldson for the Oakland Athletics, third base, his first All-Star appearance. And of course, someone you're very familiar with, and all of New York for that matter, Derek Jeter at short, his 14th All-Star game. And what a topping for a career. Maybe he didn't deserve to get this start, Gary, but he's a fan favorite, and that's who's paying the bills, the fans. So they're electing Derek Jeter as their starting shortstop.
Well, it's very true, Rich. I agree. I don't think he deserved it, but like you said, people want to see him, and it is his last one, so it'll be part of the Derek Jeter retirement tour, much like last year we had the Mariano Rivera retirement tour as he went around baseball. So
Yeah. In the outfield for the American League, it's Jose Bautista for the Toronto Blue Jays. Mike Trout, of course. Already his third All-Star game. It seems like Mike Trout just got into the league shortly, short time ago, but already his third All-Star election here, and is only 22 years old. A superstar in the making there for sure. And Adam Jones for the Baltimore Orioles, his fourth All-Star game. And Nelson Cruz is the designated hitter for the American League, 34 years old, playing for the Baltimore Orioles, his third All-Star bid.
and interesting that David Ortiz, the usually is the designated hitter, and he didn't get it this year. So, but Nelson Cruz certainly deserves with the numbers he's put up so far.
Yeah, and catching for the American League, Salvador Perez. Haven't heard too much about him. 24 years old for the Kansas City Royals, his second All-Star game. And let's go across with the pitchers. The pitchers for the All-Star game for the American League. Dylan Bechances for the New York Yankees, and I hope I pronounced that right, his first All-Star game. Mark Burley, Toronto Blue Jays, his fifth. Yu Darvish for the Texas Rangers with his third All-Star game. Sean Doolittle for the Oakland Athletics, his first. Felix Hernandez over in Seattle, his fifth game. Greg Holland, Scott Kashmir, John Lester, Glenn Perkins, and for the Detroit Tigers, only his second election to an All-Star game, Matt Scherzer. And we talked a little bit about Detroit seems to be lacking with a lot of players selected on this starting lineup, Gary.
Well, Rich, as we're talking, they are giving out some of the reserves, and there is some Tigers showing up now, uh,
Hmm.
as well as other players. They've just announced Edwin Encarnacion, Jose Altuve, Jose Abreu, Victor Martinez from the Tigers, and Yaspidis Cespedes. I don't think I said that right, but from
That's probably better than me.
and let's see, Derek Norris, Kurt Suzuki from the Twins, and Adrian Beltre, also on the AL reserves.
So you know the Detroit Tigers had to sweep in there and get some more players named to this game, and Rounding out the starting pitching, Masahiro Tanaka for the New York Yankees, his first All-Star game, and that's good news for Yankee fans. 25 years old, and they paid a ton of money for him, so they'll get to see him in this year's All-Star game.
Yes, they certainly would, and some other players making it. And pardon me, I couldn't write down their name completely, but Ramirez, Moss from Oakland, Alex Gordon, I think it is, from the Royals, and Michael Brantley from Cleveland.
Yeah, so this is all fresh information. Of course, the voting for the All-Star game ended around July 4th, so the voting is now over and the starters are now named, and we're less than a week away from All-Star Tuesday, which is when the game will be. And of course, we talked a little bit about all of the events planned around the All-Star game. Of course, the Fan Fest there in Minnesota will kick off on Friday, July 11th, runs through Tuesday, July 15th. There's an all-star concert on Saturday night, July 12th there in Minnesota. And let's see what else. The Taco Bell All-Star Sunday game featuring the Sirius XM All-Star Futures game. And that's a game a lot of people like to look at with some possible future stars in the game of baseball. Some AAA and AA players invited to that game. And also as well on Sunday early evening is the All-Star Legends and Celebrity softball game that follows the Futures game, about 7:30 out there Central Time. And then we get ready for the All-Star Workout on Monday. And, of course, the Home Run Derby is going to be on as well. So full lineup of big-time games and events centered around the All-Star game.
Yes, and I remember when it was here last year, and constantly was busy, and it seemed like everywhere you looked, David Wright, who was, of course, captain of the home run derby for the National League last year, and started at third base for the National League last year. It was in his home field. And, of course, as we said, Matt Harvey was a starter for the National League, starting pitcher. And he just seemed to be everywhere, and I think it really took a toll on him on the in the home run derby because he didn't perform so well in that. But he was definitely the face of the Mets and of the home run derby last year and of the All-Star game, and really did a terrific job with that. We'll see.
Yeah.
With the Twins, not too many superstars on the Twins this year. That's so I don't know, but it's a beautiful stadium, and they'll do a great job there, and should be fun and interesting to see.
Yes, it should be. And I'm on the Minnesota Twins Wikipedia page here. I'm going to be honest, I haven't really heard too much about the Minnesota Twins. Of course, Gary and I are like National League fans, but did a little reading on them this afternoon. I'm not sure if you can see that Wikipedia page up there, Gary.
It was up, and now it's gone.
And that's what happens with our screen share program here sometimes with Google Hangouts is how we record the show when we do our YouTube shows here. But anyway, the Twins, founded in 1894 as the Kansas City Blues of the Western League, the team moved to Washington, D.C. in 1901 as one of the 8 original teams of the American League. They were named the Washington Senators or the Washington Nationals. And let's see here. In 1960, baseball granted the city of Minneapolis an expansion team, and Washington's owner requested that that team be moved to Minneapolis and instead give Washington a brand new expansion team. So upon league approval, the team moved to Minnesota after the 1960 season, setting up shop at Metropolitan Stadium, while Washington fielded a brand new Washington Senators. So a little bit of history there behind the Minnesota Twins. And a lot of great players have played for the Twins over the years, and I'm sure we'll get a chance to see some of those players as well during this All-Star game, Gary.
Yeah, we had Rod Carew and one of my favorites, just because of his name, Zoilo Versailles,
Mm-hmm.
and Harmon Killebrew and Bob Allison. And
Paul Molitor was a great player, a very solid player over the years.
yeah, he certainly was, and played with both the Twins and with the Brewers. And the National League announcement is coming out as we speak. I'm jotting them down. And here are some of the National League reserves. Giancarlo Stanton, of course, is going to be on the team. Jonathan Lucroy of the Milwaukee Brewers has made the team. D. Gordon of the Dodgers. Freddie Freeman of the Braves. Starlin Castro of the Cubs. Todd Frazier, the third baseman of the Cincinnati Reds, he is on the squad, and that probably means that David Wright won't be on this year. Charlie Blackmon of Colorado, Hunter Pence of the San Francisco Giants is on the team. Todd Massaraco, I think also with the Reds, he's on the squad. Daniel Murphy gets his first All-Star bid as the representative of the New York Mets, and he'll be on the team. And Carpenter from St. Louis, and a Harrison, and I didn't jot down the team he was with, so we'll see. But those are your reserves and your starters on the NL side and the American League side.
Very good, Gary. And the teams have wasted no time in touting this. The Yankees have a tweet up sent about 20 minutes ago with their representatives going to the All-Star game. And of course, they have three going with Jeter, Tanaka, and Bechances. And some other teams have done the same thing. The Los Angeles Dodgers, just about the same time, about 20 minutes ago, talking about Clayton Kershaw. And I kind of feel that he'll probably start this game for the National League. I can't think of anybody else that would do a better job for the Nationals. Of course, he had that nice game the other day where he had a no-hitter. So who's your pick for the National League starter, Gary?
I'd have to agree. I think it'd have to be Kershaw, maybe Greinke, but personally, I think I would go with Kershaw. You want to shut him down early and try to send a message to those American leaguers. So Kershaw's the guy to go with in my estimation. So we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, and who knows, we might see a surprise starter like Tanaka maybe take the ball for the American League, although I kind of doubt it. But there was an interesting article just this morning in an online publication, a newspaper down in Florida called Florida Today. It was sort of like a USA Today type of paper. But the article said, should fans vote on the All-Star Game starters? And this particular writer, Michael Parsons, says no. He starts off the article by saying he enjoys filling out an All-Star bracket every year, especially at the ballpark, where you pick it up and you get to punch out the holes on all the cards. But the way that we pick an All-Star team will never change. He says the ballots are done so early that some players are left off, and others who have not hardly played at all are on it. How is that fair, he asks. So he does have a valid point there, even as you said earlier in the show, Gary, Matt Wieters not going to be playing. Um, but yet he led American League catchers in voting. So, it sort of, how can you vote on somebody that's not even going to play type of a situation? So, uh, in order for a fair picking of the teams, he suggests that the managers pick the All-Star game players, and the fans would have some other method of selecting some players as well. But he's not a big fan of the way we vote on the All-Star game starters.
Well, I think they've been arguing this ever since they started with this. I forget what year now. It used to be when we were kids. Or when I was a kid, it would be picked by the leagues and by the players. I think would vote for who they thought should be on the team. It's a tough one to say, but as you said before, it's the people are paying them money and they want to have a participation in it. So this is the way that they came up with the idea of participating by letting them pick the teams and vote for the starters. And Rich, we haven't really had any real bad picks starting a game. Okay, the Matt Wieters thing, but if he was healthy, he'd still be a good pick. And it's just come down within the last few weeks that he's not going to be playing. So, and look, it's people that are watching the game, and you want to get them to watch, and these are the guys they want to see. So, but I mean, if you look at the lineups, they're pretty representative. There's nobody that other than Derek Jeter, but look, you knew Derek Jeter was going to get it one way or the other. He was going to start this game. I mean, that was kind of a no-brainer. Um, so I don't know how you could really change it. It's the folks are paying for it, so they're going to keep it. And as I say, it really hasn't. There hasn't been really any bad starts that I can recall in the last couple of years, maybe 10 years ago, but nothing recently where people have said, "Holy cow, why did they pick that guy? It should have been this guy." There's always somebody that'll say something, but it really not that bad. Usually, the guys that they picked are pretty well up there.
Yeah, that's for sure. It seems like the fans have a good grasp on who should be at the All-Star game. And I'm in agreement. I think it's great for the fans to be able to select these players myself. I really don't agree with that article that is written, except for the occasional player that, like he does say, the ballots come out so early that sometimes a player can be left off, and they don't necessarily get on just because of that. But the fans have voted, they've spoken, and they've elected their all-stars, and that's how this game goes. So can't wait for it to start. Seems like it's going to be a power-packed game as usual, and a lot of build-up for this game. So much more so to me than like a National Hockey League or National Basketball Association, where there's not as big as a hype as a baseball all-star game, in my opinion.
Well, I think that the All-Star game when we were kids, or when I was a kid, was really big stuff because you never saw the National League or the American League, depending upon what city you lived in. I was fortunate growing up in New York. I did get to see both after 1962. But so the All-Star game was big because that was a chance to see a Willie Mays, or if you're in American League City, you never saw Willie Mays or Willie McCovey or Philippe Lou or Koufax, Drysdale, any of those guys, except in the All-Star game or the World Series.
Yeah, so that's an interesting way for fans to have that viewing. Even a lot of the East Coast teams don't see the West Coast teams that much, so we don't get to watch Oakland very much, or San Francisco being on the East Coast here, Gary. So yeah, I guess it's a great idea of having these extra players in on this game.
Yeah, in fact, it wouldn't be a bad idea to expand the roster uh, to try to get see more players, and give more, you know, players a chance, because there are a lot of fine players out there now, and some of them you're not going to see. But it's not like the old days where some guys would get on every year on their reputation, and they'd be on every season. You know, I can remember a couple of years they had two All-Star games in one season.
Yeah, that was probably something else to have two in the same season.
It certainly was, and I was a kid, so I don't know how they did it with the breaks and everything, but now they made it. It's really the way they set it up. It's a whole week thing almost, and as you said, they build up the hype for it. And for a host city, it's a wonderful thing. Even for a city the size of New York, it was a terrific thing last year. And I can only imagine how a city like Minnesota, relatively a smaller city than New York, is really getting hyped up over it. So good for them. And I think the following year comes back to the National League and goes to. I believe Cincinnati, but don't hold me to that. And but it'll be interesting. It looks like a good squad, and now you can vote on the extra guy or whatever. They got one more starter or one more person you can vote on the team. They just had a list up there. I didn't get that, but Rick Porcello is on that list. But it's a fun time. So
Yes, it is. And of course, the All-Star game kicking off July 15th at Target Field in Minnesota. And a lot of the ex-Twins will be on hand at the Fan Fest. Rod Carew, Paul Molitor, Burt Blyleven, and Tony Oliva all serving as spokespeople. And of course, they get an extra paycheck out of it. They're working for T-Mobile and the All-Star Fan Fest. That's going to be held at the Minneapolis Convention Center from Friday, July 11th through the 15th. And this is how Rod Carew says. He says, anything they ask me to do leading up to the All-Star game, I'm going to do it, Carew said. And anything they need for the All-Star game, I'll do it. So that's great cooperation there by a great former Twin. And we'll be seeing a lot of those guys during the broadcasts coming up for the All-Star game.
And that's great that he's willing to do that for the team and the city. And as I say, it looks like a really nice ballpark. And, they've got a long history there of winning. And so good for Minnesota. I hope it all works out for them.
That's for sure. Well, we're talking about a little closer to home here on this story. The American League Eastern Division has been a very interesting race over there, and so far, I think 3, maybe 4 teams have held the first spot on there, Gary. And lately, it seems like the Baltimore Orioles have climbed up to the top of the American League East, followed by the Blue Jays, who were in first for probably 34 to 35 days before they had a bad run. They were 3-7 in their last 10 games, but wasn't too long ago that the Yankees were on top of that division, it seems like, and a lot of changes over there in the American League East, Gary.
Yeah, it's like nobody wants to win the division this year. They keep switching, changing the lead over there, but tough division, not as formidable as it used to be, where teams were all above 500. I think the Yankees are now one game above 500, and they're struggling a lot with pitching, but it is a dogfight. And as you said, Baltimore and Toronto seem to have pulled out a little bit, not much. Didn't separate themselves, but after the Yankees, there's kind of a separation between Tampa Bay and Boston. But those people can come back, and I wouldn't be surprised. You got to watch out for Boston. They could get red hot and get back in this. But really, an interesting division to watch because, as you say, uh, they keep changing hands all season.
Yeah, and the way it works out right now with the wild card, if you want to throw that into this mix, you'd have the Orioles, Tigers, and Athletics, and then you'd have another two wild card teams at this time would be the Angels and Mariners taking part in that. If we go down to the National League, we would have the National League Central. It's well, the Brewers are in a commanding lead there. Out west, it's the Dodgers at 50 and 40. They've commanded back up to the top of the NL West, and the Atlanta Braves for now are 10 games over at 49 and 39. And the next two teams would be the Giants and the Nationals, closely followed by the Pirates. And then you have a couple more teams, the Cardinals and the Reds, that are just 2 and 3 games back. So very interesting races as we're going into the All-Star break all of a sudden here. And we didn't talk too much about this the whole season, but things are shaping up to be an interesting second half, so to speak, after the All-Star game, Gary.
And how about the mini collapse by the Giants? I mean, they were 3-7 in their last 10, and they allowed the Dodgers to get back into it. Though they do hang on by a percentage point, but they had built up a little bit of a lead there, and came back to the pack. So that's going to be a race to watch, the Dodgers and the Giants. And look at Pittsburgh all of a sudden. They're 6 games over 500. So they're coming out of nowhere, and they're going to be tough to watch, tough to beat in the second half. And they're going to be a big team to watch, I think, as they make a second half run at the Brewers. And they're only 4.5 behind, and anything can happen. So that's going to be another interesting race to keep an eye on.
Yeah, and as one of your stories coming up on the show, you have a big trade that was just completed, but some of these National League teams haven't even acquired players yet. So, like you said, the Pittsburgh Pirates could land a top flight pitcher, and they could be in a driver's seat here as we go into July, the end of July, and early August. You never know. And some of those moves that are made around the All-Star break can make or break some of these teams. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens regarding the hot stove. And you have a story about a big trade that was just completed in baseball.
Yes, well, the A's were the first team to pull off a trade, and they pulled the blockbuster on Friday. They acquired Cubs starter Jeff Samardzija and Jason Hamill for 2 first-round draft picks and Addison Russell and Billy McKinney to kick off the trading season. The Oakland also packaged its best AAA starter, Dan Straley, in the deal. And Chicago will reportedly be receiving another player to be named later. And I believe Samardzija won today in his first start for the A's. So you might say that trade is paying off already. And he had a 2.83 ERA. Samardzija did, and Hamill, who's no slouch either, had a 2.98 ERA. And that's some rotation that they got over in Oakland with Casimir and Sonny Gray and Jesse Chavez. I think they just sent down Tommy Malone. And it's just now they got Samardzija and Hamill in there. So they are going to be very tough to beat in the National League, American League West, as they pull off the first big trade of the trading season. And, Rich, you were just talking about Pittsburgh. If they can get a pitcher, interestingly enough, their last couple of trades have been with the New York Mets, and, of course, the Mets have a surplus of pitching. So who knows? Could be a partner there for the Mets and the Pirates somewhere along the line.
Yeah, and of course the Phillies looking to probably dump salary as they are essentially, I don't want to say out of it at this point, but they're on their way down Syria's elevator. They're about 12 games out at this time, or 13, somewhere around there, but they could be big sellers as well. And some of these teams might be looking to acquire, say, like a Cole Hamels has been mentioned, Marlon Byrd has been mentioned. Basically, nobody's been held back from being mentioned from the Phillies. So it'll be interesting to see maybe the Phillies can deal some of that salary and pick up a player that is going to play better for them offensively, and that's how some of these teams get better at the All-Star break.
Well, I was just reading an article before about how this trade with Oakland really kind of helps the Phillies because it knocks one less competitor out there with the Cubs now. So now that there are a lot more teams that are still looking for pitching. And as you said, you've got Hamels, you've got Cliff Lee coming back from an injury. If he can prove he's healthy, somebody may be willing to take a chance on him. So the Phillies are in a decent enough position where they have some of those arms that if they decide to trade, they will make the trade. And there was another deal today that I really didn't understand too much, but the Yankees got into the trade market as they traded to the Arizona Diamondbacks. They traded Vidal Nuno, left-handed pitcher who has struggled mightily here, and they got back from the Diamondbacks Brandon McCarthy, who has, I guess, has struggled in Arizona this year and wasn't so happy. So I guess it was a mutual trade of disgruntled pitchers, and they pulled that off today, as well as another story coming across here that Alfonso Soriano of the Yankees was designated for assignment. So they have a few days, I think it's 10 days, to either trade him or release him. And so his career with the Yankees looks to be over. And speaking of careers looking to be over and the Yankees, looks like I got a theme here this week. But CC Sabathia looks like his career may be over, or he may be out at least for the year. Bad knees. He had a rehab start, and it didn't go well. His knee blew up after the rehab start, and there is some concern that he might need microfracture surgery. And at his age, it could be career-ending. So we'll have to keep an eye on that as well.
Yeah, of course, CC has held court there in New York for many years now, coming over from the Cleveland Indians, and that would be a shame for his career to go out like that. Hate to see a pitcher of his worth just fade away in that respect. But as you said, Gary, some big name national leaguers may be on the block. A story about Troy Tulowitzki and his trade value may never be higher for the Rockies. That was an article out of the Denver Post. And Tulowitzki's been with the Rockies for a long time now, and it'll be interesting to see. The Rockies sometimes are like the Pirates of old. They'll deal these guys in a minute, and of course, Tulowitzki would be very welcome just about anywhere on a team.
And there's always been rumors about the Mets trying to get him because they have the young pitching, and they want a power hitter in the lineup, and he would be a good choice. But we'll see, because we don't know what the Mets are going to do yet, and we don't know what the Rockies are looking for, or what they're going to do. Are they going to try to trade him and Gomez, Carlos Gonzalez, I'm sorry, or are they going to try to hang on to those guys? But I think it'll be an interesting next couple of weeks as we see who decides to get rid of what, and who's buying and who's selling.
Yeah, if I'm for the Phillies, I would trade Rollins for Tulowitzki. Head up. What do you think?
I'm not sure the Rockies would go for that, Rich.
Plus, plus some cash, maybe.
Plus some cash. And we'll throw in Ryan Howard. How's that?
Yeah, we'll throw in Ryan Howard. Why not? Well, it was an interesting show. Follow our website at mlbthisweek.com. Subscribe to our YouTube feed on YouTube. You can watch all of our shows there. And as well, listen to our podcast on podomatic.com. And I believe we're on iTunes as well.
Yes, we are. We're on iTunes and uh, Stitcher too, I believe.
So we're all over the internet, talking baseball every week. Some of the stories you might have missed, we're going to cover them for you as best as we know how. And Gary, I think I'll take one more story, and then you take one more and take us out of here for this show. But interesting story in this week's New York Times from a couple days ago, Toronto's baseball revival. And they talked about how well Toronto has been playing at the time. This was about 8 days ago, this article. They were in first place. But they're talking about the diminishing fans that are showing up for them out there in Toronto. Very strange that the Jays would have a first place spot, but not garner the same amount of fans or more as they did last year. So a lot of reasons for that. It goes along in the article with saying, the strike from '94 and things like that may still have an impact on Toronto, but very interesting how some of these teams are doing well, don't necessarily have that big fan base behind them. If I'm thinking Atlanta Braves are about the same way, possibly, Gary. It's a very interesting way to keep an eye on this.
And of course, Atlanta's moving to a new stadium in a couple of years. They're moving out more to the suburbs, and you have to wonder. There was a story not too long ago about the Montreal Expos and an interesting documentary I watched on them, and they still maintain that they were in the process of building an outdoor stadium, trying to get the funding, and one of the provinces turned them down. And people still believe that if they had built an outdoor stadium, that they would still be in Montreal. That they had the fan base. That the reason they didn't draw, and I thought this was a fascinating reason, was that they played in that dome stadium, and that people felt that they were in. Apparently, the summers are beautiful in Montreal. And they had felt that the people didn't want to go into a building and be indoors on a beautiful day in Montreal. So the outdoor stadium idea would have supported that, and it would have worked. And everybody says, "Oh, an outdoor stadium in up in the north like that." But they maintain that may have saved that franchise. And I guess in a way it's the same reason why Minnesota put in an outdoor stadium, that the summertime is beautiful there. People don't want to be cooped up in a building. They want to get to the outside because they have such a short period of time. And maybe it's that way in Toronto a little bit too. Maybe people are tired of the building, and I don't know how often they open the roof anymore. But maybe they want to be outside, and they're just tired of the building, and maybe they need a new building, and who knows. But it's a shame. Toronto had one of the best franchises, and really had tons of people coming in all the time. And but what
Yeah,
are you going to do?
that's true, and not to mention the expense. Of course, with ticket prices, it used to be a family affordable game if you wanted a good seat, but now if you want a seat between first and third in the lower levels in most stadiums, you better have $500 if you're bringing a family of four with you for parking and concessions and just your tickets. So that's a kind of an expensive night out for people that may not be making the big bucks like these baseball players. But I'm going to keep an eye on those attendance stories for you. And Gary, you have our last story of the evening.
Well, Richie, keeping with the stadiums and stuff, in a surprise move, and I was really shocked when I read this. But the Oakland A's agreed with Oakland on a last-moment deal to keep the club in town for the next 10 seasons after the commissioner of baseball intervened. And what Bud Selig did was he gave Oakland essentially the permission to leave town, and as a result, the city of Oakland blinked, and I guess they're gonna make fix up that stadium because that's listed as probably as one of the biggest dumps in Major League Baseball. But Oakland has signed a 10-year contract to remain there, so we'll see. All the details haven't come out, but it had to be some really major renovations to be done there by the city, and they've agreed to it. And Bud Selig kind of forced it by saying, "Okay, you want to move?" I think they were looking at Santa Clara or somewhere in that area, and Bud gave him permission to move, and Oakland blinked.
Yeah, so that's an interesting story out there. And of course, Oakland's just a short ride over the bridge to San Francisco. And I think you will see them fix up that stadium. It brings a lot of money to the area, and it's a decent league to have in Oakland. Of course, it's known for their um, tough neighborhoods in Oakland. They're rough and tumble type of town that it is, but the Oakland A's apparently going to be remaining there, and that's great news for them.
Yeah, you like stability, and they do have a history of winning, going back to the '70s and everything. So it's good that they're staying, but they've got to do something about that stadium.
Yeah, I remember the Bert Campaneris and names like that from the early '70s. Gene Tennis, and of course Raleigh Fingers and Catfish Hunter, I believe, pitched for them
Yep.
as well. So yeah,
And just my mind's just Sal Bando.
Sal Bando is catching, and yeah, it was quite a powerhouse. The Oakland A's. Vita Blue comes to mind as well.
And Raleigh Fingers, of course.
Yep. Well, it's been another great show here from MLB This Week. Gary, you have a great week, and next week our show will be on Sunday, just as the All-Star events are taking place. A well-deserved rest for a lot of the players that won't be going to the All-Star game. But we'll talk to all of our listeners on the next show, and you have a great week, Gary, and hope we'll have a lot of great more stories to tell on the next show.
I'm sure we will, Rich, and you have a great week. And good night, everybody.